All right, I can see that we have some people joining. That's great. We're up to about 30 so far. We are expecting around 300 people for this webinar. So we will give them a little time to join. In the meantime, if anybody would like to say where they're from, please put that in the chat, where you're joining from. All right, it looks like we're up to about 45 people, so we'll give them just a few minutes more. Richard, if you could move on to the next slide. One thing I just wanted to mention before we get started is that we would like people to hold any questions during the session. We have a Q&A button at the bottom. Please post any questions to that Q&A section, and we will be monitoring those and answering any questions during our Q&A session coming up. All right, let's see, who do we got here? We've got Anesh from sunny Lisbon, and we've got Rebecca from the Netherlands. Welcome. One of our presenters is also originally from the Netherlands. We won't hold that against you, though. Toronto, my hometown. I lived in Toronto for 7 years before I moved to Europe. I miss the food. I'll be back soon. All right, so let's see. We've got about 51, 52 people. So let's get started. My name is Gary Scogan. I am the product manager for our Cookiebot CMP product. I will be giving everyone a brief rundown on a couple of topics related to our Cookiebot CMP, and then we will move on to the activation portion of the session, where Richard, our senior technical support specialist, will be walking us through some activations, way you can activate the product, and then we will be going into some tips and tricks, and also an extended Q&A. So for those who have recently joined, please save any kind of questions and place them in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to monitor those and get those answered. So let's get started. The agenda for today, we're going to try and keep this brief, but we'll be giving an introduction to cookies and website privacy. What is cookie compliance? What our cookie content management platform, and then this will shift over to Richard. He will be going through step-by-step activation of our Cookiebot product, following that up with some tips and best practices, and then we will get into the Q&A portion of the webinar. Okay, so what are cookies and why are they important? We're going to dive right in. Cookies are in a crucial part of our online experience. So what exactly are cookies? You can imagine that they're kind of little tiny digital assistants. They keep track of your online browsing. They're small text files that reside on your browser that stores little bits of data like your username or password or different preferences you set on a website. And what is their purpose? Session management. If you've ever wondered how a website remembers you or how you can remain logged in on a website, this is session management. Personalization. You can think of cookies like the backstage crew of the internet, setting the stage for a customized experience and also for targeted advertising. And then we go on to tracking. Online shopping, everyone loves that. Cookies are your little shopping buddies. They keep track of what you're looking at, making suggestions for next purchases, keeping items in your cart while you explore more. So cookies are used to make our online journey smoother and more efficient, but they can also be used to track users and share information with third parties, which is why we have legislations that have been enacted around the world to allow users to control what types of information they are sending. Next screen, Richard. So introduction to website privacy. So what we're going to show you here is a map. This is not just a pretty color-coded map. This is a snapshot of how different regions across the world approach online privacy. Often we kind of think that this is just GDPR or maybe it's just CCPA, but if you can see by the color coding in this map that many different countries around the world are increasingly coming online with new privacy legislations and actually increasingly enforcing those privacy legislations. Our Cookiebot product allows you to configure your banner for multiple legislations for the same domain by targeting languages and where the banner is shown. We even have the ability to display the most common legislations as a preset customization in our Cookiebot admin product. So enforcement of data privacy regulations is increasing. This is a global trend. We're witnessing a shift where authorities are not just introducing stricter data privacy laws, but also ramping up the enforcement of these laws, which is resulting in higher fines, higher penalties. Meta, the company that owns Facebook and Instagram, has been fined over $2.2 billion in GDPR fines. So they are actively enforcing these. And what does it mean for our businesses? Means that this trend towards increased enforcement places a greater responsibility on businesses of all sizes. This is not just, it's a common misconception that this is only for large businesses. This is for all businesses. And it's a crucial part of our operational integrity. 80% of customers state that they are turning their backs to a brand that uses customer data without consent. 71% of customers have stated they will stop doing business with the company if it gives away sensitive data without permission. So the key here is that we must take a proactive approach to compliance. So we'll move on to the different types of website tracking technologies. Here we have 4. We've talked about cookies already. So we'll move on to local storage. You can think of this as kind of the storage locker for your web browser. Data is stored here to be retrieved later. It's never sent back to the website that you're using. We have trust tokens, which are designed to validate a user's authenticity across websites. And then we have our Flock federated learning of cohorts. Instead of creating individual profiles, it uses machine learning to kind of analyze data across thousands of users and forming these group profiles. So digital compliance and effects on key business functions. So digital marketing and digital advertising, we all need to be able to get in touch with our customers. But we need to find that balance between our innovative marketing campaigns and also responsible data practices. Legal compliance, it's a complex world of staying aligned with GDPR, EPR, CCPA. It goes beyond mere compliance. It's about protecting our organizations between for potential fines or legal challenges. What does it mean for IT and website management? This means that we need to have a focus on auditing, reporting, documenting cookies and trackers. This isn't just for compliance sake, but also making sure that we provide a secure and transparent digital environment for our users. As we move on. So what is cookie compliance? There are several criteria for cookie compliance. The first one is that it must freely be given. So consent must be a choice. I don't know if you remember, or if you're old enough to remember, the privacy walls that used to exist where you had to consent to be able to view any aspect of a website. So that's what it means by freely given. We also need to be informed. What are you actually consenting to? If you take a look in our browser, banner, you'll see we provide a detailed list of every single cookie that is being consented to. And then granularity. It's not enough just to say, I provide consent for everything. We need to be able to provide consent for very specific areas. So in our banner, we divide those into categories like necessary, preferences, marketing, statistics, so that you can provide various levels of opting in and opting out of these specific categories. And it needs to be explicit. No guessing games of if I click on this link, it gives me consent, or if I scroll on this website, I have actively consented to using this. So that's one of the key portions of GDPR. In advance, technology is not covered by legitimate interest should only be loaded if consents. Legitimate interest is a very kind of fuzzy aspect of GDPR in that a site can state that it's in your legitimate interest for them to offer something, but we have ways of opting in and out of those legitimate interests in our Cookiebot banners. It should be easy to withdraw. So it should be as easy for you to say yes as it is to say no. You can't have gigantic yes buttons and tiny, tiny, small no buttons. So it should be consistent across your Cookiebot banner. And it should be documented. In our solution, we provide access to scan reports and consent logs so that we can detail when a consent has been obtained and what it has consented to. All right, so our next screen is why should small businesses care? We want to protect our brand reputation and build trust with website visitors. This is kind of your first interaction with the user. You want to make sure that you are prioritizing. Customers are aware of how their data is being handled, and small businesses that prioritize data privacy can stand out, building a positive brand reputation. We also want to protect from fines and violations. There's a common misconception that it's only large corporations, but it's all businesses, medium-sized businesses, small businesses, and it can lead to some serious consequences of fines up to 20,000 or 20% of a company's annual revenue, which would be particularly devastating for some small companies. And it's not just about avoiding fines, it's about safeguarding the sustainability of your business. It's an investment in your business's future. So we're going to take a brief discussion into consent management platforms. So what is a consent management platform? So imagine you are walking into a store before you start browsing and someone asks you, what kind of information are you comfortable sharing? This is essentially what a CMP does in a digital world. It is a technology that's used to obtain legal consent from users for processing their personal data. This is usually done through cookies and trackers operating on a website. They play a crucial role in obtaining and managing users' consent in a way that companies with privacy laws like GDPR and CCPA. CMP will control the activation of cookies on a website according to each visitor's consent. It ensures that only cookies a user has agreed to are installed during their web session. So there are 5 things to look for in a consent management platform. First of all, you need to be compliant with all major data privacy laws. Anywhere your business has jurisdiction, you need to make sure that you're compliant with all those laws. The next 2 are kind of next 2 is where our Cookiebot product really stands out from the rest, is that the depth of the cookie scanner. This is where we focus a lot of our time and energy in making sure that our scanners are as robust as possible to find as many cookies and trackers as possible on their site. We even have customers that sign up and pay for our product purely for the use of our scanner because it's that good. And also we automatic cookie categorization and auto blocking. We were one of the very first companies to provide this, and we have a massive database of cookies that have already been categorized into our consent categories, and our auto blocking functionality will automatically block those cookies from interacting with your site. Customization of a cookie banner. So we offer the extensive tools to be able to provide colors and highlights and shading for your banner, but we can also have a completely custom banner that could adhere to your brand standards. And automated cookie compliance. Our solution makes it very easy for you to be automatically compliant. We provide monthly or scan-on-demand reports that ensure even the most non-tech savvy person can do it. So on top of this, we also have one of the easiest and fastest onboarding experiences to bring you from sign up to activation, where activation is receiving your first consent from a website. And this can be done in minutes. So with the activation portion, we move on to Richard. So I am going to hand this over to him, and he is going to walk us step by step through how you can actually activate our Cookiebot product on your website. Richard, take it away.
Yes, I am switching screens here. So this is the Cookiebot admin interface. This is basically where you configure and set up your banner. We're not going to do that right now. We are going to, this is all set up in advance. I'm going to show you the 3 most common ways of implementing Cookiebot on your website. That is WordPress, Google Tag Manager, and then inline. And for the WordPress and Google Tag Manager implementation, you will be asked for something called a CBID. And that is essentially the serial number for your domain group that holds the configuration. So this is, let's quickly go to the configuration here. It's teasing me, it's not doing anything. Just try refreshing the screen. Maybe it just got hung up a bit. So there we go. So I'm going to go to my domain groups, and this is the CBID. This is what you're going to be needing. So copy this, and you can just do that by hovering over it, and then copy it. Now I have it, and I'm just going to start off with WordPress, because that is one of the most common ways of yeah, most common platforms you see. Like right now, this is just a test site. This is not real. You can see there's no banner here. So I'm going to go to my backend, and I'm going to go to plugins, and I'm going to say add new plugin. And then I'm just going to search for Cookiebot. And there it is. Install now. It could take a short while. It's not super huge. There it is. And now I'm going to activate it, and then something will show up here. There it is, Cookiebot. And I'll just click on it. And usually I would have gone to settings, but this is your dashboard. This is where you start off. And we wanna input our key now. So we go to settings. And here is that the domain group ID I copied earlier. So I'm just going to paste it in there. Save my changes. And believe it or not, that is actually already it. Now if I have to publish, of course. That's not going to do anything. Where is it? No, there it is. As you can see, that was all it took. Literally just get the plugin, input the key, and now I have a banner that allows me to consent to cookies. There are obviously a whole bunch of other settings. You can right now it's set to the default, so that means auto detection, but you can also set languages for the banner here. You can make it auto detect. By default, it's actually I think I've been messing with it. By default, you have auto blocking enabled, and that's also what I would recommend. There's a whole bunch of settings here. You can also implement Google Tag Manager using this plugin, so you don't have to do it separately. You can enable transparency and consent frameworks. The works. The point of this is it's really easy. You just get the plugin, put in the key, and you're basically done. So with that, I'll move on to Google Tag Manager, which is also extremely common. For this, I've set up a completely empty environment. I haven't even touched it at all. So what I always like to start off with is I go to the admin section, container settings, and I'm going to enable the consent overview. This is not on by default, which is really a shame because this makes things a whole lot easier. I enable this and save. And now if I go to my workspace and tags, there will be a tiny little shield here that shows the consent overview. Now, right now, that doesn't show very much, but once I'll start having tags, then they'll show up here and they'll show me exactly which tags have consent configured and which don't. Now, to get the Cookiebot tag, there are two ways of going about this. I'll first show you the easy way, which is through this consent overview. So again, we go to the consent overview, we click Get Started. And it's one of two choices. So go for Cookiebot here, add it to my workspace. And of course, I'm totally cool with this. So add. And now I can add a new tag. And there it is. Here again, I'm going to need that ID. And I still have it under my in my clipboard, so I can just paste it in again. This won't work now because it's obviously for the WordPress website, but this is not installed. But this is essentially again just all it took. If I now save and publish, then essentially I have a. Of course, I need to add a trigger. This is actually kind of important. So essentially, when Google Tag Manager loads tags, it goes through a sequence. And the first one is content initialization, was a tough word. Then it goes to initialization, and then it loads pages. So consent initialization is what we want first, because we want to make sure that Cookiebot loads first, so it can check, okay, is this tag allowed to load? So basically, this is all it took. I'm of course going to have to give it a name, and I'm going to be very original here. I'm going to call it Cookiebot CMP. And now basically all I would need to do to get my banner on the website is to submit and publish my changes. But before I do that, I want to make a new trigger, which is which we're going to use for tags that need consent configured. So I'm just going to use custom event. because the Cookiebot script it talks, sort of with with Google Tag Manager, and it does this by saying, okay, that was fortunate. By sending these events. So this one, cookie consent update, it tells Google Tag Manager, hey, I know what the user's choices are, so now you can start evaluating tags and seeing if they're allowed to load. So I'm just going to call it the exact same thing as the event itself. Oh. So now if I just add any old tag, it's just something random. Let's see, maybe Pinterest. Do we have that? Oh, Hotjar. Hotjar is good. Hotjar requires consent. Let's see if I can just use any random number here. Now I want to make sure that it doesn't load on page load, which you normally would do. So I'm going to use my custom event, and then I'm going to go under advanced settings, and I'm going to say, you can even see here consent settings. I want additional consent, and it's going to be add storage because this is a marketing tag. Hotjar. And now, because this is what I wanted to show you, if I now click on this little shield that we started off with, you can actually see which kinds of consents have been configured. And this is really, really wonderful. If you once in a while check this and see, okay, if both columns are empty, then that means that tag can just load without any consent. It can just do whatever it wants. So you're going to want to make sure that either it has built-in consent, or that is, well, our tag and Google's own tags. So those behave differently according to consent settings. Any other tag that requires consent must have additional consent. So if I now add a new one and don't do anything, so now let's see, can we find, I don't know what Crazy Egg is, but I'm just going to add it. And now I'm going to give the all so Crazy Egg. Oops, it's gonna be pulled by that. So now if I again click the overview, you can see the Crazy Egg has nothing. It doesn't have any consent configured. So here I can see, oh, that should be added. I don't know what this is and does, but let's just assume it's for statistical purposes. What I then would do, I go to the tag. Again, go to advanced consent settings, require additional consent, and that would be analytics. And then I'm going to change my trigger to, okay, do that. Come on. To cookie consent update. So again, I don't want the tag to load at the at the moment Google Tag Manager loads. I want it to wait until we know we have consent, and that goes in milliseconds. So this is not going to affect your website all too much. That brings us to the last one, which is basically the anything but these two. So what I'm going to do there, I'm going to go to script embeds in my Cookiebot admin interface, and I'm going to copy this script. So this, and you can see here the CB ID, you could have also gotten this from here. It's already added here. So I'm just going to copy to clipboard. Then I'm going to go to my test website, Baby Cthulhu there. And I want it to be, you can see there's no banner. And I want it to be right at the top. This is like the very first thing I want to add. And I'm just going to have to change the ID, because this is from a different account. Do that. And then save it. And now if I reload the page, I have a banner. It's literally that easy. So now that I've shown you how to add it, I think it's about time that I sort of explain how this works. So essentially, when the script is injected, let's say that the page is starting to load. So it goes one by one, it goes through these things, and now it hits the Cookiebot script tag, and it starts to load. And what the auto blocker does, it basically takes over from here. It now starts to look at every single element, and then checks it and compares it to a checklist that it builds during the scan. So when your domain is added to your Cookiebot account, it will automatically every month it will get scanned. And besides that, it finds all the trackers you have on your website. It also builds a checklist that our auto blocker uses to find, for example, this iframe here. Like, hey, is this something that says cookies? And if it does, then the auto blocker will prevent us from doing so. A little nuance here is that we don't actually block cookies. We block elements that set cookies. And that's an important little nuance to know, because if we, for example, let's say that everything I have is in a single script, and the auto blocker comes across that script and sees, hey, bingo, this is on my list that needs to be blocked, then it will completely just it doesn't know, hey, this file is essential, and if you touch this, then the whole thing will break down. So that will happen. So an important thing to keep in mind is, number one, always never test this on your live environment. If you don't have auto blocking enabled, that's fine, and it can't break anything. But if you do have auto blocking enabled, always test this first and evaluate. Okay, is this what I want? Because if you know, okay, my website bundles scripts, then auto blocking is probably not the solution for you. I would then say, okay, use manual mode instead, and then you have to manually mark up tags. Like, for example, this one just happens to be manually marked up, and that basically means, zoom this in so people can actually see it. This one has this little attribute, and its source is replaced by this. And I've done this manually up front, so everything was blocked. But this is essentially what the auto blocker does: is when it hits an element that it needs to block, it actually adds this little attribute here that tells it, okay, this is the kind of consent I need to load this element. And then it's going to disable it by, well, in the case of an iframe, by replacing the source with data cookie block source. And in the case of a script, it will set the type to text plain, so the browser thinks it's a text file and doesn't execute it. Let's see. I'm just quickly going to check my little cheating list here. Yes. Very important thing to remember here is that for this to work, Cookiebot has to be the very first thing to load. Because if, let's say, if I take it, I move it, now I'm just going to move it all the way to the bottom. That's something we like to do because, then the page is already loaded and the script doesn't slow anything down. But now this little script here doesn't really matter what it does. What it actually does is it makes these placeholders. But this script can now load before Cookiebot did. And that means if this one set cookies, then it can do so without any issues, because by the time Cookiebot wakes up and is ready to go at it, and those cookies are already set. So really the most important thing is if you use manual implementation like I'm doing here, it has to be the very first thing to load. It can be below the title or below links, but scripts, iframes, anything that can set cookies has to come after, because otherwise it's just not going to work. Yeah, that is about what I wanted to say about these things. Questions you can place in the Q&A, and with that, I am going to transfer back to Gary.
Thank you, Richard, for that excellent step-by-step activation and tips. So we have a couple of great questions here in the Q&A. So we have the first one is from Leif that says, hi, is it possible to have a small icon on the page to withdraw consent or just via a link in the footer? That's an excellent question. And we do have what we call our privacy trigger. And we recommend that people add this to their site. It allows the easy changing and withdrawing of your consent. Richard, could you actually take us to the Cookiebot homepage? Oh, you have it right there. Perfect. So as you can see, if you click on that little privacy trigger in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see what you've consented to. Actually, if you view a little bit, can you view it more there, Richard? Under the view more button. Expand that one. Yeah. We can see what our consent ID and what time our consent has been placed. Then I can withdraw my consent or I can change my consent. If I have provided consent, I can withdraw it from there, or I can change it by opening the banner back up and being able to review whatever I've wanted to consent to. And then if I provide all consent, I can go back to the privacy trigger and then withdraw that consent. And this is all entirely customizable. So you can set it to be which corner you'd like it to be displayed in, which colors you'd like to be the primary colors of the button, and the background colors, so that it'll look good on your website. Okay, let's move on to the next question from Kate. We found that the cookie banner has a negative impact on our core web vitals. Other businesses report the same thing. What plans do you have to address this? So we've actually worked with the Google engineers to try and get our core web vitals as fast as possible. So we do have a support article on core web vitals. And what I would say as a recommendation is to use a very static banner, because that's going to affect your core web vitals. We do offer an option like push down as a template type, which will completely destroy your core web vitals, but it was something that was a future request from clients because that's how they wanted their site to operate. But yes, so something that's very static on your website, like our overlay banner type, would probably be the best one. And that will help your core vital scores. But please check out our support department, our support site at support.cookiebot.com. And if you search for core web vitals, you'll find articles there on that. Okay, next one is from, has been sent anonymously. If our website is accessible in multiple jurisdictions, is it possible to ensure that the cookie banner is adapted accordingly? Yes, very much so. Our entire, so this is Richard is just showing our support site there. Our entire setup is configured to allow for multiple legislations for a single domain. So if I have a site that I operate in Canada, the US, and in Europe, I can set up 3 different domain groups which have different configurations, and each of those configurations can be tailored with both languages and geo-targeted to those specific regions. So Canada could have English and French as their languages, and it could be targeted to only users who are coming from Canada. And then I could have one for the US, or I could have multiple for the US with the multiple state legislations, targeting those individual states so that only users from those states will receive a CCPA or CCPRA banner, as an example, and then one for GDPR, where I can apply a standard GDPR type banner, and I can target all of the EU countries that are subject to that banner. So, and again, this is something that is heavily documented in our support department. So go to the support page and just follow the instructions. And if not, just reach out to our support department. To be happy to help you. Okay, Richard, I've got one here for you. Leaf has asked, is there any advantage to installing directly via GTM instead of via WordPress?
Well, it's easier. So if you don't have WordPress access, then of course, then you can add it through GTM. So it's more of a matter of taste. One difference though is that if you do implement Cookiebot using Google Tag Manager, then you cannot use auto blocking. Due to the way how Google Tag Manager injects its scripts, it would become very unreliable because you don't know when it gets injected, you don't know what's already ran there. So if auto blocking is very important and you do use WordPress, then I would implement Cookiebot using the WordPress plugin. But you can still use all your tags in Google Tag Manager because the script still talks to Google Tag Manager. So the event will still work. You'll just not be implementing it the same way.
Excellent. So we have another question from an attendee. How do I implement Cookiebot for a website that has no common CMS? Do I only have to add Cookiebot to Google Tag Manager, which is added on the website, and then it is working? Richard, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, if you have websites that I mean, some platforms don't allow you to add custom scripts. And also, if you can't guarantee that the Cookiebot script is loaded first, I would actually always recommend using Google Tag Manager. So as long as you can, as Google Tag Manager is supported, then you can add it to any framework you want. And I would also encourage people to move all of their tracking there. So if you, for example, normally inline would add a Facebook pixel or Google Analytics, then try moving that to Google Tag Manager, because it will be very easy to, well, you've seen me do it, to just assign the consent level, and then in the case of Google Tags, you don't have to do anything. You can just use any trigger you want, but anything else, basically replace an all pages trigger with the custom event. And otherwise, if it's user interactions, you don't even have to do that. You can just keep the trigger as it is. So I would say for platforms that don't allow direct injection of scripts, always go for Google Tag Manager.
Excellent. And I would also add to that is that you don't need to sign up for Google Tag Manager just to install the scripts. You can install it manually yourself. If you have full access to your script, that is your easiest way of doing it, or full access to your site. It's simply pasting one line of code into the top of your header. That is going to be your easiest way to implement it. Okay, next question we have from Maya. Can you also add the Cookiebot to a SaaS web application where users log in? Yes, absolutely. We use it on our own websites. Our admin is a SaaS application that we require people to provide consent before they use that. So definitely you can do that. Our next question is from an attendee. Is there a plugin for Drupal, or can alternatively be activated via a manual inserted script on a website created with Drupal? This one's for you, Richard.
Yes, it has to be manually injected. We don't have a plugin as such. I would like to look into if that's a possibility. But right now, we also have a guide on our help center that describes how to do it on Drupal 7. And I can also tell you that I'm looking into a guide for Drupal 10 that I will probably be creating in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. So next we have Sebastian. Hi, do we need to offer this separate categories marketing statistics required, or can we simplify by only offering required and marketing and statistics? Richard, do you have an answer for this one? I think you'd have to do a custom banner, and it's not really.
Yeah, like yes, you can, but out of the box, it's not out of the box. Like normally, it has the categories it has. You can't disable one or consolidate two into one. But if you make a custom banner, then basically it can behave just the way you want. So if let's say if you, I think some people call it the functional cookie storage type, and that's actually a combination of statistics and preferences. That's probably also where the question comes from. So if you have a custom banner, then you could, of course, configure it to make that one category opt into both categories in the back. Because in the back end, there's always these. We technically have 5 categories of cookies necessary, and those are non-negotiable. Those are always set. Preferences, statistics, marketing, and technically we also have unclassified, but that's not really a category. That's the lack of a category. But that's the 5 we understand. And you can't add any or remove any, but you could configure your interface in a way that you consolidate these things into one. And otherwise, out of the box, we also have like full opt-in and opt-out versions where you basically say yes or no to like an all or nothing kind of thing. So yes and no.
Yeah. Yeah, you might want to reach out to our support department there if you want to try to do that. From another anonymous attendee, how is it possible to manage using Cookiebot with manual implementation combined with GTM implementation for tags? And Richard, I believe we have an article exactly for that, do we not?
Yeah. Well, the article describes auto blocking compared with GTM, but you could, I mean, these work very well together. So what if you want to do manual blocking, I would first of all I would add Cookiebot through GTM because well, why not? And then the inline scripts, you basically assign a little bit of markup. So if a script has a type, it's usually text/JavaScript. Then you replace that with text type plain. That disables it, and then you add another attribute called data-cookie consent, and then one of the three optional categories. And that's sort of like that's like the on switch. We have support articles that go into great detail about how that's set up. And again, we're also ready to help if you get tied up in that, and you can just create a support request from our help center or from the admin also.
So Vlad is asking, our biggest issue is with GDPR UK, where cookie consent is not as enforced as other companies. How can Cookiebot help with data analytics to make sure we still get the data depending on consent? And more specifically, can we modify the banner to not have things like accept, reject on the same page? So we can do things like accept or more options, so to enhance exception rate, like not showing the reject button up front. All right. So sorry, I'm just going to check one thing here.
But while you check, I can sort of like get into that a little bit. What I would do is basically actually it's on my shared screen right now. This is like the multiple region configuration. So what I would do is you have your basic strictest version of the script. So that's your default CBID. So that would be almost always the GDPR style banner because that's the strictest there is. And then you configure a region, in your case UK, and then basically add a separate configuration that is less strict. That, for example, doesn't have the reject button. You can do a lot of things with that. You could also do a little bit of JavaScript and CSS rigging, but yeah, I wouldn't I wouldn't do that. But I think this is easily fixed by setting up regions and then basically make a list of, okay, what do I want to show in which regions. Set the strictest as a default, and then for all those regions, so for example, the UK, Germany, Holland, wherever, basically make separate configurations, and then basically based on your location, decide what banner to display.
Yeah, and what I was just looking up there was the naming of for your UK GDPR implementation. We do have an allow all selection button combination, so you could configure it to that where there would just be one button that would be like, okay, allow all, and then allow selection would be allow the people to go in and specifically choose which categories or select none of them. Okay, another anonymous attendee is asking, how does it work with different subdomains using different tech stacks? SaaS with a marketing website built with WordPress and application built with React. So the answer there is that it makes no difference. We use the same cookie.banner on our support website, which is what technology is that, Richard? Zendesk. Then we have our Cookiebot website, which is React, I believe. And then we also use it for our admin application, which is built with React. All right, and I think WordPress is part of the cookiebot.com domain. So we are currently using that on 3 different technologies. So it doesn't matter. You just need to have that script installed, and it will work across all your different types of applications. You just might need to follow different implementation methods.
Yeah, the only real deal breaker that I know of is if you have something that really relies on document write, like require.js. That is really one of the known problem children. Other than that, I don't know of any stacks that don't work well with our solution.
Okay, we have another anonymous attendee. On which action hook is the script loaded in WordPress? And do you have any documentation about best practices so you don't have the example plugin or custom code that will be run and placed above the Cookiebot script? All right, Richard, I don't really know much about the WordPress plugin.
Well, the thing I think is most important about and I don't exactly know how that works, but I know that the plugin really makes an effort to make sure that the Cookiebot script is the very first one to load. It's also designed to work well with other big known plugins. So usually when I hear WordPress, then that is automatically go for the plugin, because it will just ensure that you always know that your script that the Cookiebot script is loaded first. It will just immediately place it behind the opening head tag, so it takes the guessing out of it. You could of course also place it into your header template, but yeah, like the question sort of implied, that could be that could change. Like other plugins could sort of like sneak something above it. And that's also why we prefer the plugin, because it ensures that okay, it is going to be the first script to load, unless there's something that also tries to do that, and then you have a problem. But I haven't seen that in action.
We have another attendee that's asking, we notice traffic spikes in Google Analytics caused by Cookiebot once a month due to the Cookiebot crawler. Is there any way of preventing this from happening?
We scan from set IPs, and you could sort of like filter against that, and we use a very specific user agent string. Both are listed in a support article we have, because that is a known issue. And what I hear from most people is that adding those 4 IP addresses that does the trick.
Great. Sebastian is asking, how does the CCM affect statistics in Google Analytics? Will there always be some kind of anonymous total stats? And can we compare traffic before and after introduction of the cookie banner?
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, I don't know. I do know that consent mode makes it so that that people who have not consented, that you can model data after that, but how that actually looks internally, I have no idea. That is still one of those things that was on my list to take a look at, and well, I never got around to it. So I gotta be honest, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, Sebastian, if you can contact us after the webinar, we can get back to you on that. And probably the best way to contact, I'm going to put my email address in the chat here. Free to contact me and anyone else that did not get a question answered, because we're running a little low on time here. Let's see, looking at your site, cookiebot.com, if I first accept and get the cookie, then regrets and withdraw the consent, I see that there's still Google related cookies in the browser and some other cookies are cleared. Do you have a function that clears cookies on withdrawal? How is GDPR seen on stored cookies after decline, even if the script should not be loading? Do you need a page reload again for blocking scripts after you first allowed cookies? I'm going to throw that one to you, Richard.
Yeah. This is kind of important, but when you withdraw consent, the permissions are gone and all first-party cookies are removed. It's not possible to remove third-party cookies that you do not own. So we can't remove those. And another thing to keep in mind is that once a script is loaded into memory, just because you withdraw consent doesn't mean it doesn't exist anymore. So what you usually see is when somebody withdrew consent and then does something that triggers that script. So let's say Google Analytics is measuring scrolls and clicks and all these kind of things. It will still be able to do that until the page is reloaded and then the script is properly blocked. But with consent mode, but that's purely the case for Google. That will instantaneously get the signal, hey, now you don't have consent to do this anymore. So even though the tag is loaded into memory, it won't keep accessing your browser storage. This is again a good case for Google products and Google consent mode. But if you have something like Hotjar or Facebook Pixel, as long as it's loaded into memory, it can still keep resetting that cookie until the page is reloaded. So some customers have requested, and then they get a little snippet they can add, where basically as soon as a withdrawal is triggered, the page reloads, and then you cancel those things out. It's a little bit, it's not the best user experience, but then at least you can be sure that okay, cookies are not getting reset again, and these scripts are removed from memory.
Great. Hello, and thank you for the webinar. If we want to customize the banner, where can we find a list with all the HTML placeholders? The documentation for the subject seems to be too old. Richard, I believe the documentation is up to date, even though it might be old, is that there's been nothing introduced in that would change
The only thing I know is missing currently is an official. There is a placeholder, but the official placeholder for the new TCF 2.2, where you have the vendor count at the opening. We're still missing that one, so that needs to be updated. But as far as I know, the official placeholders are still up to date, and the IDs you would use, because if you make a custom banner, you don't actually have to build you don't have to copy all the functionality. If you assign the same ID to a button that we did on our banners, then the event listeners that are attached to that will get hooked into your own button. So you don't have to do much JavaScript coding at all. You can essentially just build what you want to build, and then just use the same IDs we did to copy the functionality. And then the placeholders are basically they just fetch text, generally speaking. And as far as I know, there's just one thing that we haven't added yet, and that is the vendor count or TCF specific banners. So it should be up to date, old but up to date.
Leif has a question. If we want to switch to Cookiebot instead of the solution we have today, which is a WordPress plugin, in what order do we install Cookiebot? Delete the current one first and then install Cookiebot, or what is best?
Yeah, if I understood the question correctly, then you first want to make sure that everything that's old is gone. And I would actually even say that even before adding the domain to your admin, you want to get rid of the old solution, because the scanner can't consent to cookies. So let's say you right now have a website with a competing product. Our scanner would go to the website, it would get to the banner, and it would essentially not be able to continue because it doesn't understand what it's looking at, and basically it sort of like just stops. So the scan result will also not be valid. So what I would do is basically get rid of the old solution, set up Cookiebot and add your domain, and then add the Cookiebot script. And then by that time, hopefully your website is already scanned and the auto blocker will have instructions ready to prevent cookies from being set. So I would always start by removing the old and then up with the new.
Okay, it looks like we are at the end of our time. I want to thank everyone for all these amazing questions. We really appreciate you asking and giving us a chance to answer any kind of questions. We would like to answer any remaining questions afterwards. So I have put my email in the webinar chat. So if we do have your information, we will contact you with an answer to your question. But if not, please send me your question and we'll do our best to get you any answers. So I want to thank you all for joining. This has been our first webinar and hopefully not the last one. We look forward to talking with you guys in the future. Thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate your enthusiasm and questions.